All righty, test one, two, test one, two, two, two. All right, we got volume. We got volume. I meant to go live 20 minutes ago. Um, what I wanted to do, just in case I didn't tell people last week. Um, I'm trying to go live every Sunday around 8 o'clock. I'm just running 20 minutes late. Of course, when I was in the army, that would be a no go. Um, yeah, that would be you get some repercussions for being late um, in the army. But I'm retired, so I don't have to worry about that. Just want to check and make sure I got a good volume levels. Um, okay, and I think until people get the, if you hit, I think you have to hit the bell and notifications. If you've already been subscribed or if you're a new subscriber, I think you have to hit the bell, and I think that alerts you when I go live or when I post a video. YouTube is supposed to do that, but I also wanted, because I know people started. I had to delete a few comments on the last video I did. It was a reaction video, and what I was doing was people. Some people think that I watched the video all the way to the end, but basically the guy was basically getting you to sign up for his mixing class, and I'm like, there are too many pro engineers out here that give mixing tips. Dave Pensato, he's been doing mixing tips. Let me see. Okay, I got somebody popped in. Asiatic, is it Asiatic or Asiatic Greens? Forgive me if I mispronounced that. Thank you for joining in. I'm doing good. I wanted to. Thanks for tuning in. If you're a new subscriber, thanks. If you've been around, thanks. I want to do these live chats. Asiatic, was that Asiatic? You said first Asiatic. Was that correct? He said first Asiatic. I think I'm pronouncing it. Okay, Asiatic. Good. Okay. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going live. Thanks, Man Network. Hey, what's going on? Hey, homie. Thanks for tuning in. Today's topic for the live chat is analog/digital consoles versus DAW controllers versus just using your keyboard, mouse, and using the mixer in your DAW. That's what I want to talk about, and I want to get everyone's insight on that. I was gonna post a video and let people post comments, but I just rather just live chat it in a live stream, because everyone's gonna have a preference. I am old school, so that's why I have generally analog consoles in my setup. I just like analog consoles. That's just me. But not everybody wants to use a console. So I'm first of all, I'm going to talk about the pros, and then I'm going to talk about the cons of an analog console. Then I'm going to talk about digital. Then I'm going to talk about DAW controllers, like my Faderport here. It's a DAW controller. And then I want to talk about the keyboard and mouse and the DAW. And I think that, first of all, with analog consoles, or for those that don't know, or you're new to, or you've never got a chance to work on an analog console, not even just talking about like this Allen and Heath or Yamaha, or even a large format recording console like an SSL, which is considered a recording slash, it's considered a recording slash mixing console. Here is the pros. Obviously, the sonic character that millions of records has been done on. I mean, analog consoles is where everything, the foundation of all mixers, roots from, because analog was before digital. Digital they just came up with functions to make an analog, just so that it's so that a lot of things that you can do in a digital mixer that just makes life easier than an analog console. The problem, one of the biggest cons, so there's a couple of cons to analog console. There's actually a few. But a lot of times the pro of the sonic character sound characteristic that it produces is what almost everybody in the industry have always sought for. And that's and also with analog tape. You know, we're talking about traditional 2-inch or tape machines and an analog console and traditional outboard gear is the staple sound of all recording studios across the board. They've been trying to emulate plugins and tape saturators and saturation plugins and tape emulators and everything, and try and even analog algorithms in programs such as Harrison Mixbus. Like I got Harrison Mixbus 32C, which is their console, the Harrison console. That's the sound everyone's chasing, especially if you are into bands, especially for bands. When you're recording drums, bass, guitars, and vocals for the most part. I'm talking about your traditional, whether it's country band, rock band, a jazz band, or whatever the case, that analog sound. So we're doing it with plugins. Let me got DDM. Says I used them both at some point. Now I'm on a Soundcraft. I think it's the Ghost you're talking about, the Soundcraft Ghost. Now I prefer a mixture of both with digital and analog. And then of course, Jula says digital is compacting hardware into software in a hardware. Okay, so for those that are tuning in, once again, thanks for tuning in and joining the live chat. I'm really surprised the amount of subscribers that joined from me just making that reaction video. And the thing is, I just want to clarify before I finish talking about analog consoles. I want to clarify that I wasn't criticizing the guy's video. I just want to clarify that. I was saying that the guy in the end was selling mixing, tips and all that. I'm like, well, Joe Correll from, he does a lot of mixing tips and all that. And he runs Treasure Isle recording studios in Nashville. There's free videos like that all over the internet. He's one of many. So that's why I wouldn't even charge. There's so many. It's kind of like, for example, me being a veteran, why would I pay a company to do all this stuff for me to get my claims for my VA disability when I can do it for free? All I got to do is go on to the VA line and fill in the claim. I just got to make sure I have evidence for my claim. If the VA see that I have enough evidence for my claim, they will award me my claim for disability. So why would I pay a company thousands of dollars to do that? That's the same thing. It's kind of like, why would I charge you to how to use a compressor on, for example, how to set the threshold, the attack, the release, the ratio, when there's so many free on there. So, see, Brian says, I kind of hate that guy too. Always seems so smart. It's kind of like, and I'm not picking on this guy's channel, but I am kind of. And his name is Glenn, and he runs Spectral Sound. He's out of Canada. And, his whole thing is, the guy's a very knowledgeable guy. He really is. The problem that I have with him, there are people that don't like him because he yells and everything else. I can get past the yelling. The problem that I have is when you're so biased to one genre. There are people on my channel, there are people that are into hip hop, there are people into rock, there are people into pop, there are people to R&B, jazz, all kinds of genres, right? So I'm not going to cater my channel to just strictly R&B. One, I don't listen to just R&B. I'm a gospel musician every week because I play in church. So I definitely am gospel biased, but I'm also R&B biased. I'm old school from Earth, Wind, and Fire to Confunction, but I'm also rock. I like everything from AC/DC, Back in Black to Van Halen, to you name it. But I also pop. I like all the pop stuff. But I also like jazz. One of my favorite jazz musicians is Herbie Hancock. So I'm a mixture of all kinds of genre because I'm a musician. So I like all genres of music. And so I think a lot of people generally just want to know if you're not good at using a compressor or an EQ or reverbs. A lot of people don't know that you have to actually change your diffusion and your dampening and your decay and your delay on your reverbs according to what you're using it for, and things like that. People just want to know so they can make better recordings and better mixes. So that's what I'm trying to cater my channel to. So, but with this channel, it's nothing but metal, nothing but metal. And I'm like, okay, I don't play metal. I'm a keyboard player. You know, you're always talking about guitars. Even though I play a little bit of guitar, a little bit of bass, I play keys. So I need to learn I need to know what's a good way to mix keys. You know, should I record them in mono, things like that. But let me get back to initially what I was talking about on the cons of an analog console. Like, for example, consoles like this has an external power supply. But this console right here is 140 pounds. So it's a two-man lift. Can you imagine trying to lift an SSL like a 4000E or a Neve VR 68 or 88 or even an old school, the old school Neve, like an 8048 or those type of consoles? Those consoles are so heavy. But another con to it is because of the power supplies, they are extremely warm. You need a lot of AC to cool those things down. So a lot of times in a commercial studio, because it's a commercial building, they're running the air and all the time. Everything's running all the time. It's no big deal to them because they're generating enough clients to pay for the electricity. But electricity bill in the commercial building is probably $1,500 to $2,000, maybe even more. All the lights, if they're running multiple live rooms and control rooms, easy $5,000-$6,000 a month. So that's the cons to analog console. Digital consoles, except for the big ones like the D Live or the Digico or those type of large format digital consoles, they still got some weight, but there are a lot of advantages to digital consoles. But you got to remember, inside those digital consoles, there's still AD to DA converters like my analog. It's just like the more expensive digital consoles, they usually have a lot better AD to DA converters. So I can kind of understand why. Well, yeah, I still want to be able to do things in a console type of control way, but I don't want to deal with the weight and the space that they take up. So I can understand why people would want a controller or cascade a bunch of controllers together, like the Icon or the Behringer has the X Touch, or you have Personas has the Fader port. There's the Fader port 8 or the 16. There's a single, and there's other digital DAW controllers. There are people that have gotten into that. Even the SSL has a DAW controller. So I can see why people do that. Let me read some people are posting in comments. Okay. Patrick says Yamaha PM3000C 40 channel. Our church used to have one of those, so I know that console. Running Mixbus 10. Present using Allen and Heath, the QU16 digital mixer. Yep. But I'm waiting on the Arturio 16 rig, which will take the preamps of the Yamaha, and it should be fun. Yeah, that should be. We'll see if you like that console, you like that setup. I think you'll be happy with it. Allen Heath, of course, the QU is the digital version of, they have the QU32 and all that. So great digital mixers. Allen Heath has been leading along with Yamaha, and there's other companies, Personas, Behringer. I think the Behringer Wing and the X30, Behringer X32 is their most successful digital mixer. The Behringer Wing is the most success. It's probably the flagship of consoles for the Behringer series. If I was going to digital mixer like that, I would definitely look at getting at that Wing. I just like that setup. But there's some people that I've seen people They think that the Behringer Wing has a few flaws with the touch screen, like it's not responsive like it's supposed to, but I don't own one, so I don't know. Let's see, man's dress. Before you get the Arturio, know that their inputs are really, really hot on the input gain, even though the lower setting external preamps run hot on it. Yeah. Speaking of hot preamps, I'm gonna tell you a preamp that's really hot. Is my Warm Audio, my Tone Beast. I love that because it's basically an API. They mimic the API preamp circuitry in that. So I think that's I love that preamp. I only got one. I want to get a couple more of those Warm Audio since they're affordable. You know, anywhere from $400 to $600 on used market, or $600 brand new. But I definitely want to get one. Let me read some more stuff. Brian says, learning on your own. You can rely on YouTube, and these people often try to make you think you need some secret they have. The key isn't mixing courses, but getting better at recording. Okay. This is Brian is absolutely correct on this, because I started in studios in the 90s. Started on the Tascam M520, and we only had a few pieces of outboard gear. And all the mistakes of when I listen to what the recordings of what I know now versus what I didn't know then. And I listened to those recordings. Most of that stuff was on cassette because, cassettes were a normal thing in the 90s, right? When I listened to a lot of that stuff, I can kind of relate. Okay, I'll go back to what the guy, when I make the reaction video, I can kind of understand what, when he made a video about understanding when you hear something that sounds like you did it. Because I listen to my old recordings and like, yeah, that really wasn't professional level like I thought. But you don't know what you don't know, right? So yes, over time, I learned actually how to EQ properly. I'm like, oh, the biggest mistakes, and how maybe you can understand this and maybe you can't understand this. It's kind of like when you see someone do an EQ setting and they do the V. It's like not realizing that all you did was boost in 100 or 60 hertz. All you do is boosting that, and you're boosting 10K or 12K or 16K, but you killed all the mid-range, which pretty much the mid-range is the fullness of the mix, is the mid-range, right? So it's kind of like using EQ properly, versus, we're talking about notch. Most of those EQs were notch. Though I didn't know those were notch filters. I just saw that it was it was EQ. You see 20 bands or whatever, and you would say, okay, I'm gonna put, you just make the V. And I was like, that is the worst thing you can do in mixing and trying to get a solid sound, is to say, I'm just gonna make it a V. Oh, I'm just gonna cut, so I had to learn how to properly EQ. Just like I had to learn how to actually use compressors properly. I had to learn how to actually hear things when you're panning and actually this stereo image. David Gibson, I always recommend his video. It's probably one of the best explanations for mixing that I can think of on YouTube, as far as understanding what's going on. It's called The Art of Mixing by David Gibson. It's a dated video, but he is probably one of the best tools out there. It's 3 hours long. I highly, highly recommend watching that if you've never seen it. They got some cheesy, I don't know what you call them. They have some, there's little inserts of videos. I don't know what you call it, when they have these little cheesy jokes or whatever, but overall the video is probably the most informative. So let me read some more comments. Okay. Let me see. So let's see. Patrick said, looking forward to trying it to see what happens. I actually piped it through my Alesis HD 24 out to the Arturio. Okay. I actually have an Alesis HD 24 sitting in the rack. I want to employ it one day. whenever I get an opportunity. I just want to try it, just to highlight that, because I forgot I haven't used my ADATs and all that stuff in so long. I probably want to do a mix. I did a video like this before, using just the leases and the outboard gear and the console. I want to do a video like that again. So let's see. Let me read some more comments. Brian says, I've been using the Tone Beast pre going in, and then last mix in my chain for console flavor in my DAW. I only use a trim plugin on the channels. Let's see. Brian says, it's a great distortion box lasting chain. I'm just reading the comments. So if anything was good. Then okay, we got L. I ain't seen L on the matter. Welcome, L. I think L used to chime in quite a bit before, when I used to do these live chats before. It says, L said, what do you think about the Soundcraft mixing boards? I think the Soundcrafts are good. I have a buddy of mine. He has a recording studio. Another where he, in his studio, he uses a Soundcraft Ghost. Soundcraft Ghosts are built similar like the Allen and Heath. They're semi-modular. And then there are people that there's I used to eyeball the Soundcraft Sound Sapphire. I never got a chance to own one. And then I think Soundcraft has a few other ones, but I think there's a history to Soundcraft. I think Soundcraft, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, I think Soundcraft used to own Focusrite, or they're related to Focusrite. From watching the Focusrite console story, if you're not familiar with the Focusrite console, I think that's one of the best looking analog consoles ever made. And of course, United Way, Ocean Way United in Los Angeles owns a Focusrite console. There were only 10 made. I think one is in Africa and BOP Studios. One is a couple of them are in Japan. One got destroyed in New Jersey, and then United out of Los Angeles has one. They only made 10, and out of the 10, 5 was it was made one way. Then 6 through 10 was made another way. So the one in Jersey that got destroyed by the hurricane that came in, it got flooded. They found another Focusrite console, but it was made a little different. They had to modify it to get it back up and running. So Al says Asiatic said Green said LX7 series. Okay. I'm not familiar with LX7 series, but I'll need to read up on it. I don't know everything, guys. I research a lot of this stuff, but I don't know everything. So L says, yes, I did find your channel because you taught me how to use the Harrison mixing board. Oh, okay. I almost gave up on the Harrison. I don't use as much as anymore. I'm in Logic now. The Harrison mixing DAW, not the console. Honestly, when Harrison Mix Bus came out, they actually have two versions. They have Harrison Mix Bus, and there's Harrison Mix Bus 32C. And because I'm an analog console guy, I knew that the 32C was actually the full console analog version in that software. Mix Bus don't give you it's still a console, but it doesn't give you all the features like the 32C console. And another reason why I decided to get into the Harrison Mix Bus, because I found out a lot of the artists that they recorded on with that console. And that would be, for example, Michael Jackson's Off the Wall album. This is all done at Westlake in California. Then Michael Jackson's Thriller album was recorded on that. When Queen came to the United States, they went to Westlake and they recorded on that console. And then then there is the Barbra Streisand, and just a lot of artists of Westlake recorded on that. Now, just because someone records on a certain console doesn't mean they always mix on that same console. What I found out too was that a lot of stuff that was recorded at Westlake by, with Bruce Swedien when he was alive, recorded at Westlake, most of Michael Jackson's stuff. Then they went over to Ocean Way to record strings. They went to East West to record horns. And they put that all on, carried all those tapes, and they went to Ocean Way and mixed down in Ocean Way. So Ocean Way can get the credit for Michael Jackson, a lot of Michael Jackson stuff too, because Quincy, after that, Quincy, because Quincy is the one that hired Westlake with Quincy Jones to record. And that's how it was that was a pretty common thing for artists back in the day. They'll record at one recording studio. Sometimes they'll mix at the recording studio. Sometimes the recording studio also would master. But a lot of times it would be mixed with one set of recording engineers and assistants. Then it would be or recorded with a set of recording engineers and assistant engineers. Then they would mix it in a different studio. And then they would finally take it, send it off, and be mastered in another studio. And the master copy is what we're hearing when we listen to the radio or when we bought the vinyl or about the CD or the cassette or whatever. The master. So it can be misleading that we think that, okay, we record it because we all know we got to record. Then we got to mix it. Once we record it, okay, I got this thing mixed so I can produce a final output and we're done. No, you're not done. You want to get that thing mastered. The master is what gives it the polished sound. It's the master, getting it mastered. There are a lot of software tools now that gives you mastering capability, but a lot of days you would take that to a professional mastering engineer because they knew how to work out how to use the right EQs and limiters and compressors and all that to give it that polish, and they knew how to bring in improper levels and everything that's unbalanced in that final mix. They know how to get it so it sounds like an industry standard sound. So let's see. Some said Sade. Yeah, I think Sade recorded at Westlake as well. It's a lot of them. I have to look at their repertoire of artists. But Los Angeles all together, along with New York and Houston and Detroit and Chicago and Miami and a lot of places have a lot of recording studios. But Los Angeles was the recording studio mecca. And that's the reason why when a lot of guys that would go or girls would go to those recording, audio engineering schools, because in the 70s, 80s, because recording studios was hundreds of them. And they all were booked because we're talking thousands of artists. And you could do that when record labels were advancing dang near half the artists they were signing. You're talking, it was so many recording artists that had recording contracts. I mean, hundreds of thousands, bands, groups, and you'll be amazed. We're talking about not just the ones that you've heard of. You've only heard probably 30% of people that were signed to a label. Of every artist, group, band out there, you've only heard 30%. 70% of people that would get signed to a record label never got released. And it sucked. Even though the record label might give them $100,000 advance or $50,000 advance, or it depends on the stipulations of the contract. And a lot of times they'll go record, depends on the producer, the musicians. There's a lot of factors to whether a record could come out sounding good or not. And if the A&R on the record don't like it or whatever, they either got shelved or dropped or whatever. So you'd be amazed, but that's a whole different video. So O'Brien says a lot of stuff was recorded on knee and mixed on an SSL. And I'm going to say this also, I'll pick just in case people don't know this. You'll be amazed that when we hear recording consoles We, of course, we naturally hear Neve. We naturally see SSLs. We also see APIs. But you will be amazed how many artists have recorded on MCI consoles and mixed on Tridents, or vice versa, or Audience, or Soundcrafts. And there's another one called Sound Something. You'd be amazed how many artists recorded on Neotex, Capricorns, Caddies, Caltech consoles, Sony MXPs. There was so many consoles, Harrison consoles, the 32C. There is a lot of consoles that don't get. You'd be amazed. Even Alan Heath. Alan Heath pretty much was more of a live format, but they did make recording consoles. You'd be amazed who was recorded on the Midas console. There are lots of them. Yamaha consoles. There are lots of them, hundreds of them. Just like there's hundreds of brands of different brands of microphones. Usually when we think of microphones, we think of usually the Newmans or the Telefunkens, but there are over 150 microphone makers, from MXL to Shure to Sennheiser or Sennheiser, how you want to pronounce it, to you name it. There's hundreds of them. I'm gonna say thousands, but hundreds of them. Rode, and just the list just goes on and on and on. You'd be amazed who's recorded. Some even Mackie boards, yeah, because that's one of the first consoles that, and they were endorsed, was Boys and Men had a Mackie, the 32.8 with a 24 expansion, and we had that same setup from the producers that I worked with in the 90s. And LPI had a 32x8 and a 24 channel Mackie console. I didn't like the board then, and the only reason I'm gonna tell you why I say that I didn't like the Mackie board then is because I didn't know what I was doing then. That's the funny part about it. I guarantee now, if I got a Mackie today, a 32.8 with, and if I got, let's say, just a 32.8, I promise you I would like it a whole lot better, because I actually know how to use EQ on it. I didn't know what I was doing in the 90s. I didn't. I was in my 20s. I didn't know. You see, so man said most of the bands Sony and RCA signed got shelved. They removed all potential competition for the big artists. They gave they own everything. They shelved bands wrote and give to big names. I left both companies. Yep. This is a 100% fact of what man just said. Because if you think about it, let's say Michael Jackson signed to Epic Records, right? Michael Jackson, with his Thriller album, one of the largest selling, most successful selling album of the 80s was Thriller. 100 million. I mean, it succeeded diamond. 10 million copies is considered certified diamond. 1 million, 500,000 gold, 1 million platinum, 2 million double platinum, 10 million diamond. Well, it went 100 million copies. So Epic naturally made billions of dollars off the Thriller album. I mean, it's international. Michael Jackson, 3 of the biggest songs he had on there: Billie Jean, Beat It, and Thriller. So, I mean, that album, Michael Jackson already was gaining popularity with his Off the Wall, Rock With You, but it was still heavily more in the R&B world. But when he went to Thriller and the Thriller video, Michael Jackson's mega stardom just skyrocketed. And then, of course, came out with the Bad album, and just, the rest is history for Michael Jackson. Let's see. Brian says, let me see. Oh, let me see. El said, you done a very good mix on the Behringer board. I know you can work a Mackie. Yeah, it's true. I think, and I'm not gonna pick on Behringer. I like Behringer stuff, but I'm here's what I'm thinking about doing since Mackie boards are so cheap. I'm thinking about buying a Mackie board and switching over to the Mackie, just the AB. And I'm almost think the Mackie's gonna sound a tad better. That's just me. I think the Mackie may sound a tad better. Some people don't like Mackies. It's all subjective. Like some people don't like Behringer. But then here's a funny thing. And let me see. Jay Whammy, 1215. If I'm sorry if I butchered you now, I don't mean to mess that up. Says some find Mackie harsh. Here's the thing. If you are a engineer and you're used to, I don't think Behringer or Mackie sound bad. I think you can do really well with Behringer or Mackie boards, even some, the Yamahas and all that of those. But if you're an engineer that you're coming from a Neve, like an 8078 or 8068 or console like that, or you were working on an API Legacy or Trident 68 or whatever, console like that, or an Audient, or an even an API 1608 or whatever, just consoles like that, or an MCI where it's got input and output transformers and stuff like that on it. Mackies and Behringers are not going to sound good because now the best way I can describe it, I'll use my own interfaces for an example. My interface that I have in my front room sounds decent. It sounds really good. I don't have any complaints on it. It definitely gets the job done. I'm talking about my Behringer Euphoria interface. Very affordable. But when I go to my front room, part of the reason, and I really wasn't trying when I said how I create and record a song video. At the very end of the video, the screen goes black as I got this new software. I'm used to the old Sony Movie Studio, and I'm still learning the new software. So it went blank and whatever, but you can still let the track play. One of the reasons why that Behringer sounds a little bit better than it does is when I upgraded from my Behringer interface to the Motu, the Mark of the Unicorn. That definitely has a lot to do with the sound quality. Is those Mark of the Unicorn interfaces. I have two down here, 896 HDs. I also have those Motus down there. But my ultimate interface that I have upstairs that really just is the best sounding interface I got is my Antelope Orion. And there's a reason being for that. So that is part of the reason why that Behringer sounds kind of good. The Behringer, there's some limitations, but that's a different video because I can go on and on about the Behringer. But I think overall, having that Behringer all together, it definitely sounds better than me not having it at all, if that makes sense. So let me read. Brian said that the thing now is that playing along and fixing later becomes the normal. And this is always the argument, especially when it comes to, you'll see this where they'll say, just record it now, we'll fix it later in the mix. Well, naturally, if I was doing a song for real, unlike I'm doing for these videos that I'm doing for tutorial or learning purposes, I would not play that sloppy, that bad. I would try to do the best performance that I can. Timing would be, I would make sure the timing's right on the drums. Everything. I'm going to make sure everything is hot as the best I can do, because once it's done, that's what everyone's going to hear. They're going to hear what what you did. And if it doesn't, if you're not recorded well, that's what that's the perception. So the great thing about a well polished rehearsed band, as an example, I'll give AC/DC, or I use Def Leppard. When you're around each other that long, you know each other. You know the way each other plays. You know how to cue on each other. You know exactly what the drummer is going to do, how the bass player is going to play, how the guitar player is going to play, what the vocal. You just know each other, and you can go into a recording studio and be able to record a whole lot better and get a whole ton better recordings, and which is going to make the recording engineer's job a whole lot easier. All the recording engineer I do is make sure he's got good mic placement on the cabinets. He's going to make sure that he's got great, the right microphones. So, like, in other words, if he used to playing, like he let's say the recording engineer, we're going to record Def Leppard's next album, they go into the same recording studio. He knows what guitar cabinets. He even knows, if the guitar player is using light strings or medium strings, or is he, is the bass player is using Deodora flat round strings. He knows the pickups. He using I'm just gonna make up a name. Let's say Rich Balls pickups. He knows, he knows that he can tell when the guitar has been set up, the intonation on the guitar or the bass, if it's out of whack or it's going to go out of tune. He knows, he can look at the guys. Oh, he's got a solid bridge, solid tuners. He's not, I already know what the sound is going to sound like because he's got rosewood neck. He's got maple neck with rosewood board. The whole 9 yards about that bass and that guitar. He's using this Fender cabinet or this Marshall. I'm going to use this microphone, this AKG 414. I'm going to place it in the sweet spot on the amp or whatever. He knows this. I'm going to use a ribbon mic here. I'm going to use a dynamic mic, an SM57 here. The list just goes on and on. That engineer knows that band. So their band is well rehearsed. They have already been rehearsing their song. They go in there, they can knock out 8-10 songs in a day. That album is pretty much cut. And with that, the mixing engineer, when it's time to mix the record, he ain't got to do a whole lot. All you got to do is say, okay. Most of the time, the tone and quality of the amp and the bass and the guitar and all that, it's already there. Don't have to do a lot of processing. He maybe occasional 1176 here, an LA2A here, maybe an LA3A there, a distressor there. Maybe the EQ on the board, like an SSL, the EQ and SSL, more than enough EQ for the most part. He ain't got to use a whole bunch of patching, a bunch of, and then on that, he might, in Pro Tools or whatever, he might want to just give the vocals maybe a doubler effect, maybe a little bit of delay on this or whatever. Just use a few plugins and that's it. He's ready to print the mix. It's ready. It's ready. Same thing with any band, or even if it can be hip hop. The guy's already got the sounds ready in his MPC. The samples are ready to go, whatever. There's not a whole lot of processing when it's recorded. That's why we always say the front end is the key. It's kind of like if the front end isn't there, everything becomes just too much work. It's like when you're painting a car, the paint and the clear coat makes no difference if the primer and the body work isn't prepped properly, right? So let me read some more. Some more comments came in. Yeah, that's right, Brian. I just first caveat what Brian said. Records tend to sound good when the band sounds good. That's right. So let me see. Let's see. Let's see. Man says also they would sign bands to $100,000 deal, force the band to record with a specific producer, and he gets all the money. They gave him a bonus, and then they write off the band as a tax loss. Yes, yeah, that's I made this a video before about should you sign a record deal or should you stay independent? I used to watch, there's quite a few videos on YouTube talking about this subject from people in the industry. I used to be in the industry, so that's why I know this for a short amount of time. The problem, it's kind of like I would rather have made $100,000 and got the whole entire $100,000 than to have made $10 million and only got $100,000. Kind of like a slap in the face. And that's part why a lot of people couldn't understand when TLC got on there and said, we're the hottest selling female group. We sell 10 million copies and we're broke. That is probably the most, how can I say it? That is probably the most, and this reason why I'm going to talk about why I think it's so important for musicians, artists, producers, and everyone that puts all their money and hard blood work and sweat, we should get paid for this. It's kind of like people still buying movie tickets, which are still paying actors, right? It's still paying the Denzels and all these actors that are multimillionaires from people going to the movies to watch their movies, Tom Cruise and so forth, right? Well, the ticket sales from movie theaters pays the producers, the Paramount and Fox and all these people that own movie, Tried and all these different companies that own all these, the producers, and so forth, so I don't understand why we've lost where artists should get paid. There's some people think that music should be free, and I'm like, the equipment that it take to record those musicians wasn't free. All the hard work and time that you put in this isn't free. Yet you don't want to pay for the music, but you will pay for a concert ticket to go see the artist because concert tickets are concerts aren't free. So people still spend $100, $50, $150, $200 to go see Janet Jackson or Bruno Mars, but you don't want to spend $8.99 to buy their album. And I get it, the old system, most people when they would get, that's a whole different video about how artists got paid. But I still think that money should be made for the artists. I think that we just should take away from the greedy record labels. But anyhow, let me read some more comments. Nakala Studio says, I was just thinking the other day about Obsession with SSL and Neve, and some of the best selling records weren't even mixed on those boards. The power of marketing, I guess. That's what I was just talking about. Was mentioned earlier about Neve and SSL. And I said, you'd be amazed how many bands were recorded on. You'd be amazed how many bands were recorded through an MCI. Matter of fact, 1979 studios don't even have a Neve or an SSL in their control room. They have an MCI console. They also incorporated a switch to put in some API preamps in their signal chain so they can flip the switch and go, I can get the MCI flavor, I can get the API flavor. They don't have Neve or SSL. But SSLs were never known for having some of the best preamps. They were always known to have the best mixing because of the dynamics. The EQ and the dynamics section in their SSL bus compressor was SSL's glue for the analog consoles. Most people didn't use a lot of the SSL preamps. Most people end up using Neve preamps. That's why the Neve 1073 and 1081 was some of the most sought after preamps. They just chose to go with those because of what Neve on the preamp side. But there's also a lot of preamp companies out there like Universal. I have a Universal Audio 610 right here. That is a stellar preamp. I also have some Joe Meek preamps, but I also have Avalon preamps as well. I do have some Neve. These aren't Neve. These are Altron. They're Neve clone, but they have the same circuitry, input-output transformers, cinematic transformers, input and out, and the circuit. And I think there's a 2554 op amps in them. I have to research that again. Neve sound. And of course, I have the Tone Beats, which is an API sound. But I think one of the best preamps out there, I haven't got my hands on one for what it can do, is the Vipre. But Aston Pittman made when I watched I was sold on that Vipre. Just never could got my hands on that. Stand for variable impedance preamp. So if God willing and Lord willing, and I'm blessed to get one of those, I will. Let me see. But you're exactly right. As far as those consoles, you'll be amazed how many people recorded on a Helios or an Audience and so forth. Let me see. And I own Neve consoles and had an SSL. 99.9% of people don't need either brand to make up their top tier music. This is true. I would say, even a lot of times when people using the preamps in their audio interfaces, like if you got, let's say the Antelope series preamps, you're in the ballpark already with that, or if you got a Focusrite Scarlett, or you can have an M Audio or the the Universal Audio Apogee, or just you're already there. You're already there because the preamps, the biggest thing in recording, the gear is the source. The recording source itself is 50% of the recording, if not more. Let me see. I will say Yak Diesel. I was about to say outboard gear helps boards go a long way. And I would get into a long drawn out I would get into a long drawn out on that and how they generate it with outboard, because the console and tape machines wasn't enough. So they started incorporating a lot of outboard gear to change up the flavor instead of just using everything directly on the console, which is like the console had dynamics, most didn't. You had to use external, and they just, we call them plugins now, but we still, like me, I'm a hardcore outboard gear user. And then Brian says some of the crap, because I don't want to, this is a YouTube channel, so some of the crap mixers worry about isn't stuff listeners thinking about. It's crap labels worry about, because they want to slick it's kind of like this. I know what you're saying. It's kind of like if I get into music theory, if you're a musician and theory, one of the things is you'll hear this 1, 5, 6, 4 chord progression. A lot of chord progressions have gone to the generic, bland chord progression, and 1,000. So they think chord. When you got companies like Sony, Warner Brothers, and all these that are control record labels that say our products aren't going to sell us, it's like a generic blend. If you go back to the 80s and 70s and 90s, no one's music sounded like anyone else's music. Now, today, a lot of people's music sound the same because they think they got to use those same chord progressions. They're not using a lot. They've gotten away from diminished chords in their music. A lot of augmented chords. They got away from a lot minor. That you're using the basic, and I don't care how you reverse or interchange that same progression. It's the same chord progression. It's like, okay, you don't know how to go to 2 in that progression, or you don't know how to go to 3, or you don't know how to go to 7 and 3, or I'm just talking progression numbers. To make your music a lot more interesting, you don't know how to modulate and switch keys. Okay, I'm going to go, this F major chord with a G in the bass, and I'm going to automatically go up to the A flat major 9 to give your music a little more flavor. You got to go from C to G to A to F. That's gotten old. That progression's gotten extremely old. Rick Beato talks about this one progression that's destroying music because that's all people think they can do. Like, no, you can go to from 1 to 2. No, you can go to 3. You can go to 6 in these progressions to make your music a lot more interesting. Okay, so let me go to listeners like authenticity. Exactly, they do. They want. This is the reason why you have artists like Stevie Wonder, or even a lot of times Earth, Wind, and Fire, or even Madonna in the back in the day, or just a lot of artists. Even if you go back to 80s music, 90s music, the creativity was on a high level. 70s music, it wasn't, so, and I think that's why people, they're starving for that. They're starving for that. Let me go to Schmidt's school, Stretch Studios. Said Avmar, thank you for your channel, Pathfinder. Oh yeah, Pat. Yeah, you see the see the Pathfinder. Yeah, a retired MP Ranger. Thank you for your channel, Pathfinder, retired MP Ranger. Now, okay, I don't know if you're an MP Ranger and I'm Pathfinder qualified, but I'm, as far as MP, I was never military police. I have a good friend of mine. He was an MP. He's a 31 Bravo. I was never an MP. So, Tab, clearly not unit assigned here. Tab, clearly not unit assigned here. I'm new to the audio. Any chance I could get a setup checklist? You know what? Actually, I will, since you mentioned that, that's a good video. That is a good video to make. So I gotta remember that. I need to write that down. Good video, a good studio setup checklist of what I would get if I was going to set up a studio. That's a good video. I'm going to remember that. I said I don't borrow against the store. Howlin' Wolf. Okay, so, and of course, man's asking, what do you mean by a good setup checklist? He's asking him. So, okay. June says, has the Top mixer been mentioned? And if you know the story of Toff, the guy that used to engineer and build Trident Studios is the one that left the company. I think his name is Michael Toft, and he came up with Toft consoles. But Toft was supposed to, they're made in China. Now I'm not going to knock made in China, not anymore. I used to. I'm not going to anymore. Even though I don't think it's a good idea to make in China when China's always pushing the envelope, with the United States, and like especially if you're a hardcore Apple user, you ought to know a lot of Apple Mac stuff is made in China. And I'm like, oh, it's kind of, playing a little dangerous when your stuff is made in the country that you talk about making them enemies and your Mac and you. So anyhow, but Toft created these consoles that were basically Trident consoles, but at an affordable price. I don't think that they got the the promotion and the push that they deserve. I don't think that I don't think they would be a bad board. I never got a chance to work on a Trident console. But from what I've heard, all the recording artists that came out of Treasure out there, they use a Trident. And there's also Cherokee Studios, they use Trident. And quite a few studios have Trident consoles. I think they're probably a good sounding board like any other board out there. So Kevin says they say the analog boards are more fuller. The sound more bigger. They sound more bigger and alive. A lot of digital boards and dolls are flat sounding, but they're good for the workflow. And it's subjective because most of the time when it comes to digital boards or your doll, it's not necessarily the doll or the digital board that's actually sounding flat. It's the AD to DA converter in it. If you noticed, like I have an older Yamaha 1V. That older Yamaha 1V is not going to sound as good as a Yamaha TF board today, because the Yamaha TF board today, which is the digital boards that Yamaha makes, have way better AD to DA converters. Let's talk about AD to DA converters in a nutshell for right quick. What's really making an AD to DA converter sound so good is its ability to process sound and the sampling rate. The process and the sampling rate, it's almost like if you're into photography. What slows down a camera, especially when you're taking multiple photos, especially if you're on burst mode or whatever, is the camera can get logged up in a buffer and slow the camera down because it can't process the film through the processor to get it on the actual I'm drawing a blank on the word I'm looking for, the SD card or the CFast card or whatever you got in your computer, so you can to store that picture. The processing speed can be the same problem in your PC or your Mac. In other words, if you don't have a fast enough processor and enough RAM, it can slow down. It can slow down your ability to do things because of that. And the more sampling, there's a video that really explains digital to analog. And I'm probably not giving it justice, but analog, one of the biggest thing that I said this early in the video of why analog consoles are the way they are, is one of the biggest pros to analog consoles, hands down, is the sonic. It's the same thing with 2-inch tape machines. It's because of the sonics, the fatness of it. It's kind of like if you take a cassette player and you play a CD. The CDs are always going to tend to be cleaner, but cassettes always sound fatter because it's, I have an old school cassette. I was going to do a video on this. I was using this in conjunction to compare to like a 2-inch tape machine. And I was going to emulate, this, because this spins, because they designed these cassettes, when we used to see the 2-inch reel-to-reel machines, the reel-to-reel machines, and you would play something on a reel-to-reel machine versus playing it on a vinyl or whatever. And the reel-to-reel machine would just sound but it's also speaker dependent too. Do not be fooled that if you can have an analog console or whatever, but you got crappy speakers, it's almost like trying to listen to a mix through your speaker on your phone compared to listening to some actual real speakers, real monitors. So, but analog is the circuits, hands down. It's the op amp, it's the transformers, it's all the circuits that make the sonic character. When you run signal through it, that it gives it this, and that's the reason being. That is the reason why analog. And this is why they're still trying to make plugins to emulate analog, like tape saturators, analog characteristics and stuff like that. They're trying to make digital sound as much analog as possible. But your AD to DA converters is crucial to helping you achieve that. So let me see. I think I missed some. He's talking to a man. I meant the best message. Okay. Yeah. How do you use sounds from VSTs to create addictive tones and songs that people want to replay over and over and over? I'm just gonna say this for DI. How you for that is you have to be creative. In other words, let's say someone sings a vocal part, and let's say the song can be, let's say something like "I love you," right? Something simple like that, right? I love you, but let's say you put this VST plugin on it that makes it look, it makes it sound like it went, and it made it, whatever. It does this effect to it. when people hear that, I love blah, 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 you know, whatever the effect is on that VST. That's how you can do that. You can make it interesting. You can make it sound reverse. You can make it sound like it's in a hallway, or sound like it's talking on the telephone, or whatever. You know, you just gotta be inventive with those plugins. That's all I can say on that. Let me see what else. Because okay, yeah. Okay, let's see. Remember back in the day, we learned music in the schools that was taken away. I'm one of those persons. I started on trumpet. I started in a band. I'm gonna tell you the benefit of that. Of people that have never played an instrument, play in the band. When you've been in that type of environment, what makes it great is not only do you know, like me, I was second trumpet, then I went to first trumpet, and then I also became the tuba. I played tuba. What made it interesting is you're sitting in the band, and you can hear like where the trumpet set, the trombones behind me, and then the tuba was behind at the back. But I can also hear the saxophones in front of us. The flutes are on the very front row. I can hear the trombones off to the side. I can hear the baritones. And I can also hear other musicians around me. So you learn to hear how you're playing blended with 20, 30, 40, 50 other people. So you learn to hear things, how it's supposed to sound when they all come together. And that's the benefit of not only hearing that in a band, but also in a marching band. I played in marching band. I used to also go, when I was in high school, I also went to Central State University. So I played tuba in Central State University before I joined the Army. So you're used to hearing things. So in a mixing environment, or when you play in a band, because I also played in bands, like actual nightclub gigging bands. I got a picture of the band. A couple of bands I used to play on the wall over there. You're used to hearing how things are supposed to sound when everything's working together. So engineering becomes if you notice, a lot of engineers were musicians. That's why a lot of musicians make great engineers, because they know what stuff's supposed to sound like when they're trying to blend stuff together. They know sonically where bass is supposed to sound, and keys or guitars or whatever. It's just a sonic thing. So let me see. It jumped up some more. Let me see. Okay, so Ghost user. Could we get a? Could we also get a? Let me read this right. Could we also get a bedroom producer checklist for people with a laptop starting on a budget? Believe it or not, my setup in my dining room is probably the ultimate bedroom setup. It's just in my dining room. If you haven't seen that video, I do what they call a 2024 update video. Get a chance to watch that. I start off in the dining room. That's a bedroom setup. And it's super affordable. And it's effective if you're interested. And then man said, yo, name the budget. Yeah, because it depends on how much you want to spend. And it says, oh, Yak says EI Sky uses a trident and swears by it. And going back to the consoles right quick, which thousands of studios were using SSLs. And that's why I couldn't understand when Al Schmidt was alive. And he was like, I'll never touch an SSL. I don't like them. And I'm like, the record plant has an SSL. Larrabee Studios has an SSL. Lecture Lady has an SSL. Who doesn't have an SSL? Ocean Way has an SSL. Even though Capitol Studios has some Neves in there, so does Air Studio. Air Studios has Neves in them. Al Smith said, and I give, it's like kind of like, okay, Al Smith, even Bob Clearmountain mixes on an SSL. Even though Bob Clearmountain uses Neves, and he mixed on pretty much anything. But what I like about Bob Clearmountain, he's a very humble mixing engineer. Al Smith, you know, granted, yeah, I get it. Capitol Studios, you know, all these, you know, orchestras and, you know, people, you know, Al Smith's the greatest engineer, and, you know, not you know, crapping on the guys. Great guys. I think he's a superb engineer, but it was a little bit of arrogance in that comment. Talking about SSLs, I won't touch them. But Chris Algae's got multiple Grammys mixing on SSLs. I'm like, and I guarantee a good mixing engineer, you're not going to hear. There's so many other factors to what's going on with the recording process that the Neve or an SSL is not going to make a big difference whether you mix on a Neve VR or an SSL 6000. You're not. The sonic characteristics and the EQ and everything else is not going to be tremendously different. It's not going to be like blatantly obvious. Oh, that's a Neve VR. Oh, that's an SSL. You can't hear it. So that was kind of like to me, like a condescending. I don't know if he did that because Neve was promoting the video, because, you know, there's always hidden agenda behind when there are these people promote these, you know, brands, and they give, you know, I granted, yes, Rupert Neve probably was a solid friend, you know, both rest in peace, Rupert Neve, rest in peace, Al Smith. But, you know, that's the thing when it comes to people that swear by a certain brand. I think all of them can sound good if you know what you're doing. Let's see. Aperture speed. Yeah, aperture speed, ISO, and of course your f-stop on is key. But a good lens, a really good lens. Everything else, you know, checking your bracketing, your histogram. I'm talking photography. Checking your histogram, bracketing, your metering. You know, whether you're using center weighted or spot metering or whatever. Checking for exposure, vignetting, all these key things into making good photography. But yeah, aperture speed. Yeah, aperture speed, you know, whatever you want, you know, your shutter speed, you know, if you want to 250 thousandths of a second, 500 thousandths, whatever. The faster the shutter speed, you know, the less light, because that's how fast the shutter's going to open and close on the lens. But let me move on to some more, because I got some more stuff coming in. Man, $5,000 interface, MIDI controller, microphone, maybe a $2K budget. That essentials gear, and considering a computer has already been purchased yet. Okay, let me see. And it's all recording. Let's see, it goes. Okay. To be clear, I'm referring to hardware, software currently owned, but being operated as a novice. I can use streamlining and guidance. I'm gonna tell you, there is software, some of the values out there that would help. There's so many bundle deals. Like IK Multimedia has a bundle deal, but it takes forever to download all this software. Like their Total Studio Pro is a great investment. They give you pretty much every tool you'll ever need for like $150, $200. Then there's also 250 free plugins you can Google. It's called by Lander. That has 250 free plugins that you can, that you can invest in and get a ton of free plugins that will do great. You just gotta scavenge through what you can use and what you can't use. But you can get some software. Just like Luna's free. Cakewalk by BandLab is still free. They're going to paid. The Cakewalk Sonar. They're going back to being paid, but Cakewalk by BandLab is free. But Luna's out there. If you need some software, it's free. For now. Luna's free for now. But what else? That's all I can think of on that. Other than that, it's actually a really good, decent interface, like the Behringer Euphoria. I have the 16 channel one or whatever, it's 16 inputs. It's got 8 in, 8 out, but also got SPDIF and 8 at light pipe and all that. That's a good investment for a couple $100. Other than that, a pair of monitors, and you could couple $100, some free software, some free plugins, or you can buy that $150, $200 total Studio Pro. That's a couple $100. Couple of studio monitors. If you got to go to Z Sounds, just pay for it monthly from Z Sounds. But you don't have to spend a ton of money. Other than that, Rode, I think the Rode NT1 or Rode NT2 makes really great microphones. Set of headphones and you're up and running. Let me see acoustic guitar and beats, but also synth and vocals, like a good controller. Definitely want to find yourself a good controller. Like I got an M Audio, I got the Behringer. This is the Behringer. I'm drawing a blank on Behringer 61. It's got a fully automated, works great in Logic Pro. I also have my M Audio, but I also have some Arturia key labs. I got the Arturia key labs as well. And I got another M Audio here, another M Audio there. Dang, I got seven controllers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I do have 7 controllers. Good night. I'm out of control, ain't I? For all these controllers. Okay. See, Ghost uses my touch keyboard is giving me grief. Beat making, but the ability to track live instruments and the ability to mix in. Okay, what do you want to do? Okay, gotcha. Actually, I'm gonna do a separate video on my recommendations, but that's just my recommendations. There's no right and wrong in this. Hey, listen, I play electric guitar marching band. I was in the pit. Yeah, you ain't moving that electric guitar very far with the amp and all that. You ain't going very far with the electric guitar. Let's see. Kevin Sullivan, in today's time, is it possible for someone to make an album that can chart from their bedroom as a solo artist? It's definitely possible. Here's the thing on that. In the old days, the way record labels worked, you can get chart if your music was on point. And I mean, it had to be, I'm talking Michael Jackson or Madonna or whatever, we're talking the old days, right? But they always signed to record labels. That was the only way. It was a gatekeeper. It's called a record contract. It's the only way you're getting in. Or a songwriting with a publisher company or whatever, right? It was the only way you're getting in to get your stuff on the radio or music video, right? Now that is not the case because a person can go get some software. They can go give themselves some software. There's no checks and balance to that. So that's why there are people that can make great music in their bedroom. And there's some people making horrible music in their bedroom. Upload to SoundCloud, Reverb Nation, Soundcast, all these, whatever the case. Get their stuff to DistroKid or 1RPM or whatever. And hope for the best. It's almost like taking, I hate to be nasty, but it's almost like taking crap, throwing it on the wall and hope it sticks. Not calling their people's music crap. But it's almost like that effect. Let me put a song out there and hope it sticks. And if the truth fall off the wall, then, yeah. So, first of all, to understand charting is to understand how Billboard works, right? Billboard works in conjunction with record sales, right? So, if you understand record sales, you can understand Billboard and charting. Now, Billboard is following streaming. Who's getting the most streams? Spotify, Pandora,